Right, so the next phase we're going to talk about is the refresh phase, and this is a bit more detailed phase, so I'll try and go through it slowly. So, same again, we've got framework events. We have the refresh phase begins. Now, the active player removes one focus token from each card he controls. Active player removes all shield tokens from each card he controls. Active player replaces each of his missing objectives. Then there's what we have called a player action window. Then the refresh phase ends. Right, so there's a lot going on here, so I will set up a scenario and show you how it's done. Okay, so I just want to interject here with an important rule. So there is an exception to the first phase of the refresh phase. So step one is that during the light side player's first turn, they do not refresh, as in they do not remove focus tokens from any of their cards. So that only applies in the first turn. The reason that is because during the dark side player's first turn, and they have the actual first turn of the actual game, the light side player has the opportunity to interact with what the dark side player is doing. So there's a possibility to play events. So it's fair that if you're going to use resources to pay those events, that you don't get to refresh them for your turn because it's like getting free resources. So that's the reason why they put that exception in there. So that only applies on the light side player's first turn. Right, so here's my scenario. It's a dark side player's refresh phase. So if we go through the stages, active player removes one focus token from each card he controls. So let's start off by first off freeing our affiliation card, and then our objectives, then our resources, and then we move on to the units. So Captain Z here is elite. Now elite is a keyword, and elite during the refresh phase allows you to remove 2 tokens from a unit. So Captain Z here could take up to maximum 2 tokens off during the refresh phase. Stalker, he isn't elite, but he's only got 1 focus token, so we can take that off. And Vader's tie here isn't elite, but he's got 2 focus tokens on, so when he refreshes, he gets to take 1 off, but unfortunately he's still focused, so he can't be used in this phase yet unless you can perform some type of trickery or something to remove that token off. So then after that, the active player removes shields from each card he controls. As you can see from the setup at the moment, we have 2. So we take that one and that one off. Right. Then the active player replaces each of his missing objectives. So let's say in our scenario that this was missing because the light side player had destroyed the previous one that was there. We would, at the end of a phase, go to our objective deck, take the top card of the objective deck and put it into play. Okay, so this is now step 3 of the refresh phase, and there's 2 things that can happen at this point. So any of the objectives that have come into play, if they have an effect that initiates when the card enters play, that effect can immediately resolve. And then the other point is that there was an errata to the main rulebook because there's a slight confusion about cards that have the after you refresh effects. So the wording has now been changed to after step 3, which is just after the any missing objectives have been replaced. Then that is the point. Then after you refresh effects on cards can be initiated. So it's just something to be aware of, that they made a slight change to the rulebook. So at the end of the refresh phase, you then have an action window, and we'll get onto that in a minute. But first, let's talk about some nuances of the actual refresh phase. So if we go back to the beginning of the refresh phase, players should check first for any reactions or interrupts at the start of the phase. For instance, the Tarkin effect again. So if Tarkin wants to put his effect when a light side card such as Yoda or someone that has elite, if he then blanks them during the refresh phase, they would only during their refresh phase, then they would only get to remove one token from their unit because the elite keyword would be blanked out. So that's a useful point. Another useful point where you could use Tarkin is to take off the effects of elite. Right, so the this is the first point. We have our first player action window, and there's lots of things you can do in the action window that when you're new to the game you probably don't expect to be doing. So what can you do to in this player action window that could be beneficial to you? So one thing you could do is, dependent on your hand, is you can play zero cost events that you don't need at the time to get them out of your hand. Because the less cards you have in the refresh phase, the more cards you get to draw in your draw phase. So if you've got I wouldn't say useless events, but events that are free to play, you have the ability to play because the board states allows you to play them, but they're of no benefit to you, then you can play that card for free to get it out your hand. And a good example of one I play a lot is this one, Use the Force Luke. So it's a zero cost event and it has an action. Look at the top card of an objective deck or a command deck. You may place that card on the bottom of its deck. So this card at 1 pip isn't really going to automatically benefit you in in uh, in the refresh phase or in the mid game. There are some opportunities if you are trying to use the mechanics of loot, but that's for another time. But if this card isn't doing anything for you and you're really desperate to get hold of a different thing, this event, zero cost, so it's not going to incur any resource issues for when you refresh. So you can play that, use this ability, get the card out of your hand so that you've got less cards for in your draw phase. So that's one of the key things you can do. Right, so another thing you can do is when it's the opponent's refresh phase and you have certain events that allow or abilities that allow you to force the opponent to draw cards and yourself draw cards, and one of the key cards that does that is holding all the cards. So this is an action, each player draws 2 cards. Now sometimes, depending on what your hand is, it could be good to play this during your opponent's refresh phase. So what will happen is you will get 2 cards on the light side player, so 2 additional cards, but the dark side player who already has his hand will draw 2 cards before his draw phase. So these are 2 cards that he was already going to get. You don't want to play it after his draw phase because then you're giving him additional cards. But if you play it before his draw phase and the action window in the refresh phase allows you to do that, then you can give the dark side player more cards he was already going to get while you gain card advantage. And having card advantage in this game is key to winning because it means you've got more cards for edge. And using card like holding on the cards gives you more cards for edge to win the defensive battles, and then get go through your deck quicker to get to the cards that you want that can win you the game. So that's another sort of top tip for trying to use events in the refresh phase to manipulate your hand side, your manipulate your hand size while not affecting detrimentally the hand size of your opponent. So one to remember. The last type of event I'm going to talk about is another type of event you can play during the refresh phase, but this is slightly more dangerous, and you might want to wait until the later phase of your opponent's turn to play this when you know it's safe. But if you think you're in a safe position to play a card to get a card out of your hand, then this might be one way to do it. So probably wouldn't play this card on the opponent's turn, but maybe play it in your refresh phase so that you get an extra card during your draw phase. So this one though does cost, so it's Yoda you seek Yoda. So it's probably, if you've got this card, sometimes people play it at the end of the force phase, or you can play it at the end of the refresh phase. But playing that card at the end of the refresh phase instead of in other phases allows you to you'll spend your two resources that you've already that you've just refreshed, and then you get to search for Yoda, put him into play, increase the dial. But then that card, you've got that card out of your hand, and then that allows you to draw another card. So just another type of event that allows you to use a card up during the refresh phase so you get more advantage in the draw phase. So it's events like this that are key to look out for, like for playing in the refresh phase action window, so that you can still keep the economy of your hand good. And that's pretty much all there is for the refresh phase.